Alright, recording started. So I guess welcome. This is our first Siggraph Blender workshop, or I guess it's the first Siggraph workshop in general. Today we'll be going over the basics in Blender, and hopefully we'll be able to go through the modeling process, texturing, rigging, and maybe even animation in a bit. So the whole shebang, very introductory, very cursory, or very surface level. If we have time, we may go over some more advanced things, but for now, let's just get started. So I'm assuming everyone has Blender already downloaded, and this is what your startup scene should be like. Um, let's just go over the workspace real quick, just so we know like when I point things out, everything that's going on. So this big old area right here, that's the viewport. Right to the top right over here, that's the outliner. That's where you can see all your objects, collections, and groups and all that stuff. Then the bottom right over here, that's like your properties panel. It's where you could see all your render settings, bunch of other settings. Just think of everything is down here. Modifiers, we'll get into that. Super, super nice. And the bottom's the timeline. Up top, you can see like this will switch your workspaces into all the different ones specifically for whatever process you want. They're pretty good. Um, I'm more used to just making my own, but you know, just by dragging stuff, but I don't have to worry too much about that. So that's like basics of that, of the work area. So navigation in the viewport. So in Blender, the camera is actually controlled using the middle mouse. So if you don't have a 3-button mouse, I'd advise getting one if you want to do 3D stuff. But in Blender, if you go into your edit preferences, you'll go into input and you get emulate 3-button mouse. That'll just change it so your control left click or alt left click, excuse me, now functions as a middle mouse. But so yeah, if you so oh wait, let me turn on screencast keys. I believe I have it somewhere because Blender is really shortcut focused. So I don't know if I have screencast keys. So I don't want to lose people when I go through too many shortcuts. But yeah, so it's middle mouse is to rotate around the camera, shift middle mouse is to pan, and control middle mouse or scroll wheel is to zoom. Let's see. Let's see if this works. I do remember this being very testy. Oh, might help if I turn it on. Screencast keys, please. That's not working. I'll just make sure I voice things. So yeah. So that's the camera. So middle mouse, rotate, shift, middle mouse to pan. Oh, there it is. And control. And you can zoom. So now in order to move around objects in Blender, it's G to translate, which is G for in grab. I know that's kind of silly if you're used to other stuff, but it's G as in grab. When you move this, you actually don't, it's not actually moving it. You have to confirm it. So it's left click to confirm. If you want to cancel it, just like right click, whoops, and it'll go back to origin. If you want to use widget, we'll get to widgets a little bit later, because I'm sure for people who have used industry standard like Maya or 3ds Max are used to widgets. I don't like them just because when you get used to the shortcuts, it's way faster. So yeah, so it's G to translate, R is to rotate, S is to scale. Pretty self-explanatory. And if you want to lock to an axis, you can just type in the axis, so Z, X, Y, and that locks it over to that stuff. Same with all the other ones. You can rotate or scale along that stuff. So that's like basics of navigation in and moving around objects. So yeah, also my screencast keys are kind of weird. They're kind of small. Let me see if I can make them bigger. There we are. So yeah, let's see. Now, have I lost anyone yet? Just making sure. Middle mouse button. So click in your scroll wheel if you have a scroll wheel. Yeah. And then shift middle will pan and control middle. All right. Cuckoo. So now we can get into actually creating our character. Right. So let's see if I have the guy. Siggraph Workshop character. So this is what we'll be creating. This guy. I did very simple, very quick. Basically just a blob. He's also animated. As you can see. Hopefully at the end of it we'll get to this level. We'll see. So yeah. So that's the end goal. So here's the startup scene. So first we're gonna get rid of the cube because we don't need it for this one. So if you select the cube, you should have an orange outline. Hit X to delete, and it'll have a pop-up, and then you hit delete. So X for deletes. And screencast keys take a second to come back up, I think. So there it is. Okay, there it is. So then we're gonna add in a UV sphere. So for the shortcut for that is Shift A. So that creates the add menu. So go mesh, and we're going to use a sphere in this case. If you forget the shortcut, the option is up on the top left here. All these menus. So add, object, and all this other stuff. So yeah, generally the menus are going to be up here. But I use the shortcuts. So yeah, now you have the sphere. Now in order to actually edit it, you actually have to go into edit mode. So the shortcut for that would be tab. It should pop up a pie menu. If it doesn't pop up in a pie menu, it probably just automatically shows you to edit mode. So yeah, it's object. So this is edit mode, and this is where you can edit the vertices. And again, if you don't remember the shortcut, just up on the top left over here, this is where you can switch the modes. So cool. Now we have a sphere. But one other thing before we start modeling on it is that what I like to do is to add a mirror modifier to this. So that way you only have to do half the work. So go into your, so I'd go into the front orthographic view. So if you go onto your numpad and hit 1, that will go into your front orthographic. If you don't have a numpad, you can hit tilde and they'll bring up the pie menu. And you can just go to front. But numpad 1, that goes to this. And we're just going to delete half the sphere. So I hit Z to change into wireframe so I can actually like look through the object. Because in Maya, if you don't do that, it actually only goes to the selected. See, you only select the first quarter. But if you go into wireframe, so Z, and then just go to the left. You guys have pie menus, right? Because mine, I may have some things that aren't standard on default, that's all. Yep. Oh, okay. So yeah, mine might be different. Yeah. So yeah, if you automatically go into edit mode, that's fine. It's just a toggle instead of a pie menu. Um, I can. Pie menus are weird because there's also like a default setting in Blender for pie menus and an add-on that does different things with pie menus, so I don't know which one is which. But yeah. So Z wireframe and then just select half. We're in vertices mode, so select half. Make sure it's all selected and hit X. This will bring up the thing and delete vertices in this case. So with this, it's a bunch of fancy stuff to control what you delete. So now you have half a sphere. You can stay in edit mode. Go to the right where your properties panel is. There's a blue wrench, like midway down from the bottom. Add modifier, generate, and then go to mirror, which is, it's in alphabetical order, but it's, there it is, mirror. So now you have half a sphere. And that's pretty standard for basically every modeling process, just to mirror it. Oh, you threw in the infographic, which it's a great infographic to show just how crazy the shortcuts in Blender can get. Yeah, no. Yeah. It's a fun little poster. Yeah. So once you get the mirror modifier on, I would enable clipping. What clipping does is that once it hits like the mirror plane, it like will stick. So you see how it's all those vertices stick to the center. If I don't have clipping on, they'll be separate. And obviously that's a case by case basis, but for this case we're using clipping. So now we can actually start editing the sphere. So if you're still in wireframe, you could switch over to solid. Um, and then what we're gonna do for this case is we're not gonna be box modeling, which is typically what you would do for modeling, which is where you like extrude stuff. But we're just gonna like basically, like sculpt around this character or this sphere to create the shape that you saw for the character. So make sure you're in a vertex select mode, or I guess it doesn't particularly matter, but if you want to change selection modes, it's up on the top left. So right now we're on vertices select. So you select vertices. Up here, that would be edge select, and then face select. Shortcuts for that is just 1, 2, 3, not on the numpad, on like the normal keypad. So yeah, we're gonna select one up here, and then we're gonna actually turn on what's called proportional editing, which in Maya would be called soft select. And that allows us to have and that's right up the top here. That allows us to have a fall off for when we move this stuff. So now we can create the ear. So I would select somewhere over here. It could be any mode really. I'd go to front ortho, so numpad 1, just so I can see it clearly. Hit G for grab to translate, and I'll lock it to the Z axis, so I hit Z. Scroll wheel controls the scroll size, and I'll just pop this guy up a little bit, and now you have a very basic ear. Topology be damned, because we're using a sphere here, but, this is for learning purposes. And just like go around, shape the ear, maybe get to the right shape that you want. I don't know. The proportional editing? So, just scroll wheel. Yeah, and you can also change the type of fall off in the menu. You can also change it. Oh, okay, so you have to select it first and hit G. Or do whatever. And then it'll pop up a circle. You got it? Yeah, and remember, you don't confirm it when it does that. You have to left click to then confirm it. So yeah. Hopefully everyone is following so far. So yeah, so now I'm just gonna get this guy and shape him up to a little bit closer to the character. So I want to flatten the bottom a little bit. Oh, whoops. The proportional editing, up on the top bar where all these menus are, there should be like a little circle up here, and just click that. Or, yeah, and that enables it. And it's, let me see if it's O, the shortcut, if you want to remember that. Yep, but it's just up here, and you can, yeah. So yeah, and so I'm gonna flatten the bottom here. So if you hit C, that's circle select. That's what I just did there. If that just creates a circle select. If you don't want it, you can just marquee select if you want to. But just trying to flatten them out a little bit. Going back to ortho. Making them a little bit more like ball shaped. All right. So that's basic how to edit that. Now what we're going to do is give them a tail. In order to give them a tail, we're going to make sure that I'm in face select mode. So go up here, make sure it's at face select, or hit 3. So once you hit 3, select maybe like 2 squares back here. Maybe these bottom 2 squares. And then we're just going to extrude that out. In order to extrude, it's just E. So hit E. By default, when you extrude, it locks to the normals. So that's why it goes in this direction. I'm just going to lock it to the Y-axis, so you just hit Y, and then left click to confirm. Right. Oh, right. For the people who prefer gizmos, I forgot about you. They are on the side here. So these are also all your tools. If you don't see this, hit T T brings up this menu, and that has all the stuff. The shortcut is if you hit Shift Spacebar, that will also bring it up, and then you can go here and use the Giz. You should be able to use the Gizmo. It should work. I don't know why it's not working for me. Well, that should work. I don't know why it doesn't, but probably. Oh wait, no, I gotta enable. Yeah, I forgot to enable it. But yeah, that's the Gizmo, and that works exactly as if you're used to industry standard software. So that's for you people. But honestly, I definitely prefer the shortcuts. So, oh, and yeah. So you've extruded this out. But there's not much geometry here. So what I'm going to do is start adding loop cuts so that when it deforms, it like deforms as a tail and not just one giant chunk. In order to add loop cuts, there's one here. There's the loop cut thing, or I prefer just using the shortcut, which is Control R. So Control R, by default, it will bisect it, so it'll be in the exact middle. Scroll wheel will control how many cuts. So I'm just scrolling up to about like 4 or something, and hit left click. Now, the first left click actually doesn't confirm it because the actual operation is loop cut and slide. So now you can slide around the vertices in desired spot. I like it just perfectly bisected in this case, so I just right click to cancel the slide, and you should have these loop cuts. So again, it's Control R, and you have to make sure to hover over the area that you want to cut. And once you see the line, left click once. Actually, we'll make sure you scroll wheel for the number of cuts. Left click once, and then right click to cancel the slide. Is everyone with me so far? Because I know I'm going very quickly. Alright. I'll just give you like... So I'm just going to fix around the shape, get this gizmo out of here. So if you're still like trying to get to here, don't worry. I'm just going to make this more tail-like shaped. Shape it however you want. Maybe you want to keep it blocky. So I'm just back into vertex select, just selecting everything. Whoop. I like using circle select in this case because you could like hold click and then you can select multiple. So I'm just making a little rounder. So again, just grabbing it. It's C. C for circle. Yeah, you can also change your selection box by hitting W. So instead of being a marquee select, W, you can change it to a circle select and like change regular. I don't like doing this because I like having marquee select. And once you hit W, you have to cycle all the way back to marquee or box select. But yeah, it's C by default. C for circle, and that's circle selects. So yeah, so just so shape your guy however you want. So now you have like, you can already see it's the basic shape, what we're going for already. So now let's go about, let's add his mouth right now. So make sure you're still in edit mode. So how we're going to add a mouth is basically just, we're going to rip the faces, as it's called. So basically make sure you're in edge select. So hit 2 or go up top here. Wait, shift click, control click. Oh yeah, well, they also have the little thing there. So the little tooltip in case you want more stuff. Oh, also, okay, well, anyway, so we're going to rip it. Now the shortcut for that is V for rip, and that'll rip the face. So now we have the basis of the mouth. And cancel, because you don't want to move it, because you want to keep it there, but still ripped. I believe it's also functions in here somewhere, maybe. Yeah, down here. Like most of the stuff is here. Yeah. So now you've ripped the face. So now, while it doesn't sort of look like it, these are separate, so you have a mouth. I'd select a loop. So if you Alt left click, that selects loops in Blender. So just Alt left click, and it's contextual. So if you like click like in the middle of the vertical one, it will know it's going vertical. If you're gonna do it horizontal, you just click a horizontal one, and it'll know to go horizontal. And of course you can do that stuff. So let's Alt left click on that loop. So now we select it all, and we're just gonna extrude it inward just so there's a mouth. This is gonna get weird, so I just like zoom in here and just extrude it out, just lock it onto the y-axis, just so I know what direction it's going. I'm going to also scale it on 0 along the y-axis, just so it's flattened. But yeah, to do that, then we're gonna, since they're kind of on top of each other, I'm just selecting these vertices and just, oh, maybe not the last one, because I want to keep that in mouth area. So just G, lock it to the z-axis again. So yeah, and now we sort of have a mouth going. I'm going to add a loop cut, so Control R again. So a loop cut, Control R, just so it's a little less flat. So yeah. So now we sort of have a mouth now, ideally. It doesn't really show, but it'll show eventually. Well, actually, the last touch, I gave them like a sort of little fangy thing. So just select one of the vertices and just hit G, Z, and now you sort of is fang-like. Yeah. So everyone here so far, how's everyone doing? Yeah. All right, there you go. That's fair. I know I'm going quick, so my bad. Yeah. So, yeah. So I'll give you all just a second to really catch up. So just like you can mess around with them. One other modifier that I like to add when modeling is the subdivision surface, which is just really smooths out your character. So it's go back into the modifier tab, which is the blue wrench over here. Modifier, subdivision surface. It's under generate as well. So that adds a little subdivision surface. It also helps, since it smooths, it creates the lip for you. So easy. And all these modifiers are non-destructive, which means you can turn them on or off, which is right here. That enables it in Viewport. So you can also just get rid of them if you don't like the modifier. Same with the mirror, if you don't want the mirror, stuff like that. So modifier is cool stuff. So you should now have a mouth, ears, and a tail. In my example, I added a horn, which is just you just extrude out like this. So just select a face up here. So hit 3, then hit E to extrude, and just scale a horn if you so desire. Not necessary. In cases like this, I like to turn off subdivision surface because it gets kind of hard to see the topology because it shows a preview. So I'm just scaling this out. Now you have a little horn. All right, so let's hopefully you're all here by this point, and let's add in the eyeballs. So I went back into object mode. Sorry, just force of habit. So just Control Tab or Tab, and just go back into object mode. And we're gonna add in, so Shift A, another sphere. And this is gonna be the basis for the eyeball. So again, we're gonna make sure to add a mirror modifier, as we did before, but this time we won't have clipping on. So yeah. And in order for the mirror to work, you have to actually go in edit mode. Because if you try and move it in object mode, you'll see it isn't mirrored. That's because the mirror is based on the origin of the object, which would be that orange dot. So you could also change the mirror object. So I guess if you want, you could also do that, where in the mirror modifier setting, you can set it to mirror to an object. So there's an eyedropper here. So do that and just eyedrop it. But I don't like that. I like keeping all my origins in the center, which is basically which determines, it's just cleaner when everything's in the center. So in order to reset stuff to the world origin, you just hit Alt G, or Alt G resets transformations. Same with Alt R will reset rotations, Alt S will reset scaling. Sort of like reset transformation if you're in Maya. Okay, so that's that. So edit mode. And we're going to move this guy over here, and these will form the basis of the eyeballs. So I'm just scaling her down. You can make it like some beady eyes if you want to make it bigger. You can make a more eye-like shape like this. So I just like flatten the disk and give it whatever shape you want. Oh, another note. In Blender, Z is up, which may throw off some people, but Z is up in Blender. So just keep that in mind. So now I'm just trying to get the eyeballs in place, roughly the right size. And it's sort of like clipping into the body, and it's still got this like weirdness. So I'm also gonna edit this so it's a little bit flatter. So I have to go out of edit mode, because edit mode only allows you to select whatever object you're editing. So you go back to object mode, select this, and then go back to edit mode in order to edit it. You could select both, and if you go into edit mode, they will both be selected. But sometimes if you're working on one, you don't want to accidentally select the other. So if you just, deselect all, and then go into edit mode. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to flatten this guy out a little bit. Okay, so here's a tip. If you do want to have them both in edit mode, because you want to edit them properly, but you want to focus on really only editing the body mesh, or separate meshes, you can actually do some fancy stuff with proportional editing. So if you turn on proportional editing again, and go into the settings, you can actually set it to connected only, which, as the name implies, will only affect vertices that are connected to it. See, if I turn it off, it will affect the eye because it's within the radius. But if I turn it, not into compositing. If I connect it only, then it's only going to affect that. So that's also a fun little way to model. And if you only want to do this, you can just bring down the radius. Yeah. That's all right. So just add your spheres, throw them the mirror modifier, edit mode, throw them in place, shape them, and then sort of that's not right. Just sort of shape it so it's not quite clipping as much. Don't shape it too much because I kind of want them to be very round and ball shaped, but just so it's not like clipping as hard. And you can also just rotate the eye. Right. So the shortcut to select all, I probably should have mentioned that, is A. A is select all. Double tap A will deselect all, but preferably just hit Alt A. Alt, you can see, sort of has a theme with how it works of resetting stuff. That will deselect all. So A is select all, as you can see. Alt A would be deselect all. So just select this, select all, and just rotate it. So you can rotate by locking to the axes. You can also do gimbal. And I'm throwing a lot of stuff, but this is just like a fun kind of thing. If you double tap R, it will go into trackball mode, and you can see how it rotates along a trackball. It's a fun little thing. It has its situations, and it's pretty useful. But if that's too confusing for how it works, just lock it to an axis and rotate it. Oh, by default, like using the shortcuts, they will be locked to the world or the global axis. If for some reason you want to change the orientations of your axis when you're editing stuff, you'd go up here and you could change it. So where proportional editing was to the left, you can change the transform orientations. But yeah, you probably won't ever do that, but in the situations that you might need it, it's up there. So yeah, so now you should have the eyeballs, roughly in place. And yeah, for the most part, you have your character mostly modeled, and you have a basic idea of how modeling works. You know how to edit a mesh, how to extrude, and how to select vertices and stuff. So extrude just E. Let's skim 3 horns, why not? And it has scale, and how proportional editing works. So that's that. So that's it mostly for the modeling part. I could touch on box modeling, if for people who are new to 3D and don't know anything about modeling. Box modeling would be the proper way to do this. Well, not in this case, but Yeah, so let's just, whoops, let's throw this guy to the side. So I'll just, I have a character somewhere, so I'm just adding in a reference image. So what box modeling is you'd have a reference image. I have a character somewhere. Ongoing, no, I believe it's archived, finished, gremlin, images, gremlin ref. So this is a character. It's also in another promo that I did. So you'd have a character, and what you'd do is, well, let me mix this a little more translucent. And you'd basically model with this as a guide. So I'd go into wire. Yeah. So, oh, let me add a mirror. Clipping. Yeah. Ideally, in this scenario, you would delete this middle face because as you can see, when it mirrors, it keeps it, but don't worry about it. So yeah, so what box modeling is, so I have this box, so now I'm just going to scale it to, or make it fit within, we'll make sure the reference is lined up. Make it fit within the silhouette, essentially. Usually you'd want to have a view of the front and side, so when people, oops, there you go. So yeah, so this is why when you see a lot of character turnarounds, they have the front and side, because that's all you need in order to box model. Oh, hold up, this guy's in the way, so I'm just gonna hide it just for the sake of demonstrating this. So yeah, so I added a mirror modifier to it just so I only have to model half of it, and you just like make it fit, and then once you get it fit, preferably from both angles, you would then go in, select the face, and extrude upwards to form more geometry, and then just repeat the process. So this would be box modeling. And this would be the proper way to do characters. For our case, I chose specifically a very simple character, so because this gets very time consuming, as you can probably see. For people who may not be familiar with the program, there's a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, and this is basic box modeling. So yeah. So that's for the most part modeling in Blender. Anyone got any like other questions? I'll just kind of do this in the background. Make sure let people have time to catch up, ask questions. It doesn't have to be just about the workshop, just about modeling in Blender in general. Anything else you want to know? Yep. Yeah. So I'm just gonna do this for a solid minute just to show the process. So I'm just creating an armhole. And the reason why I add those cuts just so I have quad topology. Topology is a whole thing. We just like having four sides to a polygon. To sphere, there's a command for that, and then you can just extrude out. So yeah, and that's the basics, and then you go from there. So yeah. So there's that. So now, oh right, I hit it. Let's whoops. It's the one awkward part about creating new workspaces. There it is. All right. So just resetting all that. We got our little guy here, looking kind of frowny. There we go. Now he's smiling. So let's go into rigging the guy now. Or what do you guys want to do first? You want to rig him or do you want to texture him? Or add color to him? Okay, so let's see. All right. The rigging should be fine. We're not gonna even touch weight painting. We're gonna leave it to automatic and it'll work. God. No. Hmm. Yeah. Well, also, yeah. So, well, since we're gonna start talking about like looks now, and if you we're going to change the shading. So right now it's flat, so that's why you can see all the polygons. In order to change it to smooth, just right click with the object and shade smooth. And there you go. Now he's all smooth and buttery and looks nice. Nice, nice. So now let's start adding materials, the fun stuff. So back into the properties panel. So bottom right, there should be a little sphere, a checkered sphere near the bottom. Click that. This is your materials panel. Select your sphere. Oh, I guess we should probably name it. You could rename it in the outliner, just like double click. So creature or something. And then the spheres for eyes. F2 is also the shortcut. I think that's the same as in Maya. So yeah, select your creature, hit new. That will add a new material. And if you want to see the material, you would go up to the top right here. So by default, we're in solid. It's just normal solid. You can change it to Viewport Material Preview, which is what you talked about with Magid, how he works in like HDRIs. This is how we preview materials. It automatically has an HDRI. And if you drop down the menu, you can also change it if you want. You can also make it affected by scene lights and the world. Well, world. Yeah. So if you don't want HDRI, you could do scene world. And then, well, maybe don't do that. But because that goes off listen, we won't get into that. But yeah. Or if you want to just go straight into rendered, you can go to viewport and this will show the rendered view. Don't worry, this won't tank your PC. By default, it starts in Eevee, which is the non-ray traced one. It's basically the same as you'd see in like Unreal or like Marmoset. It's a real-time renderer. If you want to change the cycles, which is their ray traced, you can do that. It might kill your PC. It supports GPU and CPU rendering, so that's why I have that set. So yeah, that's that. But we're not gonna touch cycles because cycles is takes forever. Kind of a pain. So okay, so we're gonna be in let's go materials. By default there's a point light. That's why in rendered they have that. Let's go with materials just so we can get a good look. So let me think. We can get into nodes. We'll touch on nodes. So let's change the workspace since now we're working in texturing. So go up top, just go into shading, and this will get you into this window. This will automatically bring up the nodes or the shaders for the material that you have. So you don't have to do nodes for this, but nodes are really cool for custom stuff. So by default, this is what the shader is by default, which is the principled BSDF. I believe it's based off like stuff like Pixar or Disney uses at this point, where you can adjust all the settings, you can adjust the color of your character through here. Subsurface, which is sort of like when light passes through, sort of like I don't know. Subsurface, it's a thing to explain. Specular, I'd advise not touching that. If you want to change speculars, usually you'd go into roughness to either make it really glossy by turning it down or turning it up. So yeah, 0.5 is default, and all this other fun stuff down here. You can also even add emission on the principled, even though there is already an emissions shader, which Shift A. So it's the same shortcut as adding in stuff. Where's shader? So yeah, and then Shift A adds in all these different node stuff, as you can see. But we're not going to get too much into node mixing unless we get time. So okay, so for this case, you can just change the base color or mess around with the settings. For this, if you want to actually go into UV editing and texturing, I'll touch on this very briefly with the eyeballs. So for the eyes, we're basically going to do a cheats method to texture the eyes. So, oh god. So try and get as sort of as flat of a view as you can of it, a head-on view as you can, because what we're going to do is use that and sort of project the UV from our view, and use that to texture it, as opposed to actually unwrapping it. You could unwrap it by adding seams. Well, fuck it, we'll add seams. Why not? Because this is actually really simple to do. So in order so we're going back into edit mode for the eyes. And then make sure you're on edge select. So select the loop that's basically right at the edge. So Alt left click is loop select. Make sure you're like around the middle of one of the verticals. Then you can Shift Alt click to select the other side. So now you have a full loop. In order to add seams for UVs, and I'll touch on what UVs mean in a second for people who may be confused. So you hit Control E, that brings the edge context menu, but right clicking while in edge select will also do it. So yeah, in Blender you can right click and it'll bring up a context menu. So generally speaking, it'll have stuff. So now I'm in vertex. When I do that, I'll give like vertice specific options. But for here, whoops. And there's a mark seam option. So right click, that's what I just did, mark seam. So now there should be a red line. That is a horrible fucking seam, but don't worry about that. Hold up, that's annoying me. Clear seam. Mark seam. There you go, okay. So then select it all, and we're just gonna unwrap it. So hit U, unwrap. So select it all, hit U, unwrap. These are also the other stuff. What I was gonna do is project from view, as we'd only really care about one side, but we'll do it properly for the people at home who want to learn how to properly do this. We'll change workspaces to UV editing just up top. And now you can see your horrible UVs. I mean, that's actually kind of fine for our situations. You probably, yeah, you could have also left it as default UVs. Because by default, it should be that. But and that works for what we want. But if you want to learn how to unwrap UVs, that's how you do it. So for texturing this, we're actually going to texture paint it, which is basically similar to Substance, where you can live texture onto the object. Because typically what you would typically do is, you get your UV, then you'd export it out into a different program, and then you'd edit it separately. In Blender, you can just texture it right in here. So go into your texture paint mode. You can either change the workspace to texture paint, and it will take you directly to it. You can also change the mode directly, as we did similar to edit mode. So yeah. Well, this is the default UV. If you unwrapped it, the UV should work fine, just as long as there's some UVs. Then it's purple right now because it doesn't have any textures to load into the thing. Oh wait, also add a material for it. I forgot to add a material for the eye, but add a material for the eye. So go back to your thing, hit new material. So in order to add the new texture, so there should be a menu on the side here. So if you don't see it, there should be a little arrow there, or click N. N will bring this up. Go to Tool right here, and then in Texture slot, there's a plus over here, add a base color. Just make it like like diffuse, 1K, so 1024. That's fine. And yeah, so now it's no longer purple, so that means you can actually texture it. In order to actually see what you're doing, make sure you change into material preview or rendered, otherwise it won't show here. Actually, never mind, that's a lie, it does show here. Okay, so whatever. So now you can texture paint it. So all the colors and tools are over here. So now you can paint your eyeball however you want. The tools are over here, so if you want to fill it, so you make it like let's make it like red or something, you can fill it. Then like add an iris. I'm on mouse right now, but if you have a stylus, you can also use it. Oh, for the brush options, they're going to be up the top here. So you can change the radius right here, the strength, and all this other stuff. The shortcut to change the radius is F. So F will change the radius, and Shift F changes strength. So yeah. Oh, and if you go up to the little button right next to radius and strength, turns on and off pen pressure. So if you have a stylus, it'll detect pen pressure. So yeah. So text your eyeball. If you guys have any questions, shoot it out right now. Hopefully I haven't lost anyone. But yes, because I'm gonna work on creating the eyeball for my guy. Oops. Oh, if you have the default UVs, there's gonna be this like weird thing here, and that's because I diffuse. The UVs for the tip are these like jagged edges, so it sort of still sees the white. It's weird. That's why you would properly unwrapping it, you wouldn't have that problem, but it's fine. So yeah, texture your eyeball however you wish. Now you got a little guy, ideally. Oh, my guy's a little special. He's a little cross-eyed, but you know, we love him all the same. Uh, so yeah, so that's basics of texturing. If you want to get fancy, you can add like a bunch of nodes and other stuff. Um, oh, a little bit of like Gengar. He might have. Yeah. Low key though, this like design is just rip off of like the Digimon baby levels. That's gonna be our little secret though, for all the Digimon fans out there. Hell yeah, Digimon. Um, it's fun. It's inspired, all right. It's not a rip off. It's just inspired. So yeah, so that's basics of texturing. If you want, we could also go into nodes and stuff, but we'll touch on nodes since we went through that pretty quickly. So okay, we'll just touch on it like so. Let's say like you want the eyes to be. Maybe you don't want the principled basic shader. So if you want, you can add in. I don't know. Let's make it like a. So I hit Shift A. Just in this, I'm back in the shading menu workspace. So down here is like your node editor. So shader. Let's add like let's make it a glossy. So this right here is what an image texture node. This is what we just drew on. So make sure you plug that into color. Plug this into the output, and now it's glossy, sort of. Sort of. I don't know. It's weird. To be fair, a lot of these shaders are sort of obsolete because principled is basically all of them in one. So like for instance, like glossy, you can just like turn down the roughness. Emission is also on principled. The BSDF. Translucence and transparency you can also do. Specular is also stuff you can do in principled. Good question. Something fancy that has to do with physical based lighting. Principled BSDF. I forget what it stands for. It's something fancy. Exactly. BSDF. Let's see. To Google. What does it stand for? Yeah, I can't do that. Well, here's more info on the principled BSDF. Basically, it's your go-to for any shader. You only ever have to use this. But if you want to get, yeah. So, but basically, principled generally that's all you ever use. If you want, you can create a toon shader. That's really easy. I'll just quickly show you. So just literally just take. Oop, you gotta change this to RGB. Color ramp it. It takes a second. Oh, not the eyeballs. Not the eyeballs. And this is literally the quick and dirty way to do toon shaders. A color ramp. And well, let's there you go. And now you have a toon shader. And just or set this to constant or something. There you go. Now you have like those really harsh shadows. And in the color ramp you could change adjust the settings and stuff to affect it. Um, for toon shaders or just in general? Uh, in this case, since we're just coloring straight off the color ramp, you just add another node to it and just change the color, and that adds more steps to it. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I personally don't like using this specific type of toon shading because it can get really jank. Because you can see, yeah. I mean, this is Eevee. I am in rendered mode. This is what it looks like in render. So watch, if I go to camera, hit F12, that's exactly what you'll see. Yeah, that's the fun thing about Eevee rendered, is that if you go into rendered mode, so Z rendered or in the top here, this is like 99% the final look of what you'd see when you render it. Yeah, because like I said, Eevee is the real-time renderer, so it's the equivalent of any game engine renderer. So it takes a lot of shortcuts to do things. If you want the proper renderer, which would be like Maya's Arnold, you'd go into cycles. And then you can, well, toon shaders, this style of toon shader kind of breaks in cycles, as you can probably imagine. Um, but you can go in here, and this is cycles. So now you got like fancy ray trace lighting, and it goes to the tiles and stuff. Yeah. The other render engine is Workbench. I still have no idea its purpose. It exists. I've never touched it, and I think about 90% of people who have ever used Blender have never touched it. I believe it's mostly for look dev, or like compositing and stuff like that. But I have no idea what it's really used for. It probably has a use, but EVR cycles. And you could turn on GPU computing, which is what I have. So instead of just strictly off the CPU, as you can see, it's a little bit slower when it's just off the CPU. But with the GPU, it goes way quicker. So, is there any other... So, any questions so far? Yeah, for texture painting, you mean? Yeah, so make sure you're in the texture paint workspace, or just manually select your object. Oh God, what button did I hit? Make sure you're selecting the object you want to texture paint, and then go into texture paint mode. If it's purple for you, you have to make sure to actually add in like an image because it's like mapped onto an image, right? So you go over here in the tool menu, which is hit N in order to open this up. Hit the plus icon, add a base color. It doesn't actually make sure to add base color, and then it'll automatically connect everything, and you won't have to go like through nodes. And once you have that set up, like hit OK. You could just, since you're already in texture paint, there's the draw brush over here, and use these just to paint. And on the right is where all your settings are, and up top. So if you want to change colors, you can change here. Uh, did that help, or you still have problems? Sorry. So are you in texture paint mode? Is it purple like your object? Oh, okay. Well, did you add a texture slot like I talked about? Okay, if you did, then you should be able to just draw on it. Is that not working? Hit, try hitting A to select all. Can you draw now? Oh, did you make sure to add a material on the eye? like a new material. That's mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I know what your problem is. So go back into the shading workspace. So up top, go to shading. Um, Look at the nodes. If you should have an image texture, make sure it's connected to the principled. Is it connected? Or do you even have anything connected to base color? Oh, so when you go into texture paint and create that plus thing here, that's what you create. If you did this, it should be here. If it isn't here, but you did create this though, right? Okay. It should auto connect. If you still don't see it in the shading menu, you just have to add it in manually. So you see, oh, I'm still in cycles. So when I don't have it, it just goes based off this color. So in order to add an image texture, go to Shift A, add, so texture, and go to an image texture. You can also just search it in the Shift A menu. Image texture, connect it, and then don't hit new or open, hit like on the left the drop down. Your texture should be there, whatever you named it, or whatever the default name is. And now you should be all good. Is it working now? Alright. Yeah. Now you cool. It's fun things about 3D. There's a lot of troubleshooting at times. So yeah, we've got him textured, roughly. Hopefully you guys had time to play around with it a little bit. So we can now move on to rigging him and do some basic animation. And then you'll have a fully created creature in Blender. So alright, so rigging. So I just moved back to the layout workspace, just so you know I have everything all good. So we're gonna add in armatures now. So hit Shift A or go into the add menu up here, but Shift A. Oh, is my screencast keys not on? I need to find a new add-on for that because that was some glitchy. But go into Armature, add in a single bone, and this will add in. Oh well, he's inside the guy. I believe. Hello, bone. Where are you? Where'd you go? Oh, well, Armature single bone. Okay, there it is. There he is. So yeah, so adds in a bone. And and in order to edit it, it's the same as any mesh. So you'd have to select it. By default, it's in object mode. So it's not actually used for posing. It's just the object. In order to edit it, you'd go into edit mode. And this has the same sort of shortcuts as you would for normal modeling. So E to extrude it out to add in joints. So I'm gonna throw this guy back into center so he's on the guy. In order to see the bone while he's like inside the model, because as you can see, you can't see it, and don't know what you're working with, go to your properties panel to the right over here. Go down to where you see the skeleton. Make sure you have your armature selected. Go to viewport display and go in front. And that'll keep it, well, in front, so you can always see it. Alright, so select it, go back to edit mode. And the way we're going to rig it is like so. So we're going to have this, basically this top bone being, basically it's only just one bone for the body, and the top and bottom bone are really just controllers. So just make something like this. So just, you know, E to extrude out for a joint, or if you want, you could also subdivide it. So if you select right click and subdivide, that will also do it. That'll actually be kind of cleaner. So yeah, so subdivide it. The option menu is like down here to change stuff. But yeah. So yeah, so do something like this. So get a bone, subdivide it 3 times, and you have this, and that's the basics for the body. For the tail, that's also basically the same thing. So just select this main one, hit Shift D for duplicate. So Shift D, move it to where the base of the tail is, rotate it so it's the right orientation, and just go the full length and then just subdivide it. Give it like 10 or something. And that's the, oh, hold up. And then add the eyeballs, and that's the basic rig. So same deal. Let's see if I remember. There's a way to extrude. Whoops. All right. I duplicated more than I should have. Hold up. There it is. All right. Whoops. Alright, well, don't do what I just did. I had extra bones. Oh, this is fine. So I just duplicate it out and okay. What I did was extrude forked. That's just the thing. It's just like Shift E while turning on mirror select, just manually edit it out. So yeah, okay. So what I did there was you can actually extrude forked, which will automatically create mirrored bones based off the mirror. So if you hit make sure you have the mirroring turned on, which is in the top right up here. So turn that on, select this, hit Shift E, that'll fork it, and it'll automatically mirror it. So when you move one, it moves the other. So yeah. So that's the basic thing. Now let's quickly test if the bones are working properly. So we would go into pose mode in order to actually see what it's like to animate. And this is what it'll behave like. So here's basically your main bone. That should move everything. That's good. I'll have to disconnect to that. I'm just hitting either R or G to move it around. If it can't get translated by default, if you hit G, it'll just rotate instead. So yeah, so now you have that. And everything should be working now. Oh. Also note for any Maya users, the default pivot point when you're rotating and doing stuff is actually the median point. So if you, for instance, select all these bones and rotate it, you're going to be like, well, why is it rotating kind of funky? It's because it's not, it does it differently. If you want to change it, you go up to the top here in that top header, hit individual origins, and that will give that little curve effect for the tail. So all these bones look to be in working order. I'm just separating this top one. So I hit, actually, I didn't need to separate it. That's fine. Oh, and if they're not parented, like if you're moving this base bone and this one isn't, those two aren't moving, just parent it. So go into edit mode. I always forget which order it's in, but select one of the bones and then select the other bone. Hit Control P, and that'll make parent keep offset. I think I did that in the right order. Yeah. So Control P for parent. So select the child, then the target, and then hit Control P, and that'll parent it. And make sure it's keep offset. So yeah, so hopefully you're at this point. Actually, hold up now. I want to disconnect the bone. So for the top bone, yeah. So hit Alt P. Alt P will clear the parent. So, or in this case, we're going to disconnect the bone because we still want it parented. So yeah. So now your bones should be like that, where this top one and this is disconnected. Got these two eye bones and this chain of bones for the tail. Any questions at the moment? Everyone here? Um, you are in, are you, when you're editing it, are you in edit mode? So you're saying you can't select the bones after? Like you, oh, ye, they don't, no. I know what you're talking about. They don't have that specifically in Blender. What they do have is select linked, which is slightly different. So if you hit L while hovering over any object, that will select the linked. But that's yeah. But that I don't think that's not based off like parents or like or child relationships. It's just based off like if they're physically connected. Yeah. So I'll do that. You can also just circle select in C, which is what I do to do that stuff, or yeah, or just yeah, all the normal stuff. Yeah. And because we're in edit mode, you don't have to worry about touching the thing because the program knows you're only editing this mesh, which is very nice compared to Maya, where you're just like clicking between things, or you have to set a reference layer. So yeah, so hopefully you should be at this point, and yeah, yeah. So on the right or the properties panel, go down to where there's like a green little skeleton boy down here. Click that. Go to viewport display right here. Oop, right there. Make sure it's in front. Or you could also just go into wireframe as we've done before, but yeah. Or I think there's an X-ray mode. That's what this thing is. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah, yeah, not now you're good. Yeah. What's up? Oh, so you would on the top header up here, there should be like two balls. And you could change it to individual origin, medium point. That changes your pivot point. Or active element. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, by default it's medium point, which for modeling is actually quite nice, but in this case, yeah, individual origins could be useful. So yeah. Before we actually parent the mesh and worry about weights, which we shouldn't, we're gonna add a squash and stretch, which is why we have this top bone up here. My shit's out of alignment just because I'm bad, but don't worry about it. So bone constraints. So this is gets into the nitty gritty of rigging. We're only gonna add one, just so you have the idea of how it works. So back into the properties panel over here. Underneath all that's on the very bottom, there's a bone and a constraint thingy down here. That's where your bone constraints are. So you can add bone constraints. So, and here's all the stuff. You could copy transforms, copy all this stuff, relationships. For this case, we're going to add a stretch too. Oh, not to that one. Make sure you select the middle bone when you do this. So select the middle bone, add a stretch to modifier or constraint. And we're going to set the target to be this guy up here. So you can either click this and find the name or just eyedrop it, which is what I do. And make sure to okay. So eyedrop your bone. What that does first is it actually goes looking for like the mesh or the object first. So it'll select like the whole armature by default. But we want the specific bone. So that's what this other option is for. So we didn't name our bones because we're bad, or I'm bad, but it's just bone 001. So it's up here on the top left. You can see the name. So bone 02 to 001. So now it should make sure you clear the parent on the top one. This should squash and stretch. Yeah, make sure that the top bone's parented to this bottom we're going to use as a root bone. Because before it was parented to this, so there was like some weird looping dependencies. But yeah, so now you have a squash and stretch. If you parent, make sure everything is sort of parented, then you can even, everything. So yeah. Everyone get a squash and stretch to work. Because this one's kind of finicky. Also, alright, yeah, no problems. Also, a shortcut for all that, if you don't want to go through all these steps of setting all these bones, so if you just get rid of the bone constraint, if you select the target and then select the bone you're going to add a constraint to, you hit Control-Shift-C, that's Control-Shift-C, actually, or maybe, yeah. This will add constraint with target, and this brings up the exact same menu as the bone constraint menu. So add a stretch to, it will fill all of that in for you. So it'll add in the target automatically. So Control-Shift-C. You can also just... another fun fact, why are the screencast keys no work? Makes me sad. If for some reason you ever forget what the shortcuts are or where things are located, Blender actually has a really nice feature where you can search for any operators. So if you hit F3, that'll bring up a menu and say it's like, oh, I forget. Oh, hold up, make sure I'm in pose mode. That shortcut only works in pose mode. So it's like, oh, I forget what the constraint shortcut is. So it's like we just sort of constraint target, and it's right there. And then you can do the same thing. It should. Oh well, not for that one, I guess, but for any other options or any other thing. So yeah, hopefully you've got to this point where you have had the stretch and everything's stretching. If only like the base thing is stretching, that's fine. These just stretch because I made sure to parent it to it. So it moves like it moves. So cool. Now let's actually attach this guy to it. So in order to add weights, just select your mesh first, then your armature. Make sure you're back in object mode when you do this. So object mode, hit your mesh, then your armature, hit Control P, and that's the shortcut for parent, and go down to armature deform and hit with automatic weights. So now your guy should follow the armature. So select your armature, make sure in pose mode, and he flops around. His eyeballs aren't moving. That's because I haven't set the weights for the eyeballs because it's a separate mesh. So just same thing, select the eyes, hit set that, automatic weights. Actually, for that, envelope weights probably would have been better, but yeah. So now your guy should be moving, ideally, at this point. He gets a little wonky when you stretch it real there, but don't worry about it. This is the root. Yeah. Also, this if you just move in an object mode, that also functions as, in a way, a root, because it treats it as a whole object. But also, if you want in pose mode, you can also just use this as a root bone. Ah, yeah, that'd be the problem. Just go into... So go up to the top and top left and just go into pose mode. Yeah, it's just actually a different mode. Yeah, sorry, I forget. Let me see if I can turn off pie menus. Because by default, for me, when I hit tab, it opens up the pie menu. But yeah, just go up there in order to get into pose mode. Or I think shift tab might also send you into pose mode. No, don't hit shift tab. That enables snapping. System. Navigation. Oh, well, sort of reminds me. Another camera thing for people. If you're coming from Unreal for some reason and you like the way that camera works, where you can like a first-person cam, Blender has a fly cam. So if you hit Shift tilde, you can now control your camera with WASD. Hit scroll wheel to go faster or slower. Um, and just like left click to confirm as per usual. It also has what they call gravity, so you can actually walk. So toggle gravity's tab. So now you can actually walk around in like a jump in your 3D scene. And this is actually a really cool way to do like camera movements, because you can like essentially pair your camera to the view and just walk around like this, and you can edit it so you sort of have like a handy cam kind of thing. But yeah, that's that. Also, I don't know if you guys noticed it before, but at the very bottom down here, you can see it will show you any different options you have when you like do a selector. For instance, when I hit like select this and hit grab, you see all this information down here shows up, and that's all the different shortcuts that you can do from here. So yeah. And that's how I did the toggle gravity. You can go around like this, like teleport. Whoop. So yeah, fun stuff. So has everyone got their guy all bouncy and moving around with the armature? We have to edit the eye bones because we only want to affect the eyeballs, but I'll get to that right now. So let's see. So go into pose mode. So just go up here, pose mode. And you can see when I move this, it actually affects the whole mesh as well, even though I only want it to be on the eyeball. So that gets into weight painting. In this case, it'll be pretty easy because it's basically just turning it off, on and off. So select your eyeball. Actually, no, select your body mesh. Go to the properties panel and where the triangle with like 3 vertices down here, that's your vertex groups. So go here and then go back into edit mode, select everything, and we're just gonna remove it from the eye bones. And this is where ideally you name your bones properly. So for the sake of this, since I did a fancy extrude, it has the left and right for me. So I'll keep that in. This is eye left. I'm just renaming the bones so it's easier to see in the weight paint. Eye right. And just go in, select everything, and hit remove in the vertex groups. So that will remove the weight of those bones on the mesh. So now it should, go back into pose mode. It should only affect the eyeball. And now you're good. And that's basically, right. That's a problem. Right, so what happens is those eyeballs are doing a lot more than I sort of envisioned. Alright, this gets into weight painting now. So the mouth, as you can see, it was probably mapped to the eyes. So that's why it's gotten this weird deforming. There are ways to fix it. None of them are very nice. I guess just go into weight paint mode. So we'll do some lightweight painting. So make sure go into pose mode, select the bone that you want to edit the weights for, which would be this middle bone for this instance. I want to make sure to add that onto the mouth so that it moves properly. So pose mode, select the bone, go straight into object mode, select the mesh, and then go into weight paint mode. So either go into the top drop down up here, or like if you have pie menus for whatever reason, you just go into weight paint. Now you see the weight. Oh, never mind. Sorry, you don't have to select the bone. That's an old Blender thing. So in order to see the weights or adjust the weights for that specific bone, what bone number is it? I believe it's bone 2. Yeah, it's bone 02. Go to bone 02, go into weight paint mode, and now you can see the weights. As you can see, all this was where the eye was, and it didn't weight paint for that. Actually, you know what? No, fuck it. We'll do weight painting. So yeah, and then I would go change your drawing mode to like mix or something. That's at the top left over here. Hit mix. Bring up your toolbar over here. So tool if you don't want it, and then just paint it on. It's fine. Oh, right. It'll behave a little bit weirdly because we technically never took off the mirror modifier. So it'll automatically mirror it, but it's whatever. And you can just keep it all red. It doesn't matter since it's only just like one bone. It'll be fine. Hopefully. Hopefully. Please. Please don't prove me wrong. Okay, yeah. So yeah, so just paint that all in. And now he deforms properly. Yeah. Ideally at this point, it's best practice to actually apply these modifiers. Otherwise, so in order to do that, so just select your object, go back to your modifiers tab, hover over it, and just hit Control A. And that will apply the modifiers. So that applied the mirror and the subdivision surface. So now this object is actually done that. And it's sort of like similar to when you like delete history in Maya. Same idea. Except that the program doesn't break when you don't apply modifiers. It just behaves weirdly at times. Unlike Maya, where it just like kills. So now you have a fully animatable character. You can do a little animated thing now. So all it's working. In order to add keyframes, it's just I to insert keyframe, and you can insert whatever you want. And then you can just do fun stuff with that. So this is the timeline down here. So make sure you're in pose mode for this if you want to actually do the bones and stuff, because if you're in object mode, you'll just pose the object, and that's not what you want. So it's like, so I also, if you're planning on animating, just going into keying, which is on the top of the timeline, top left. Change your keying set to like location rotation. That way, whenever you hit I, it will just add it and it won't bring up the menu because it knows you want location and rotation. So I set one for that and move it over here. Let's move it over. Set a keyframe for that. So just hit I again. And now he moves. So yeah. How's everyone doing so far? Everyone at this point? Oof. I feel that. What's going on with your bones? So what's going on? Yeah. Okay, so for parenting stuff, that's based off the P key. So Alt P will bring up your, or if you just right click, that will also, actually don't do that. Actually, yeah, right click will also bring up your parenting stuff. But Alt P is a shortcut to clear a parent. So if you want to like, want this bone to, like, I don't want this to be parented, the stuff, this Alt P will clear it. You can either actually just disconnect the bone, but keep the parent. So that's more for like rigging and stuff, or when you're animating things, or just clear parent just completely. If you want to add a parent, hit Control P. It will either have connected or offset. Um, Usually, in this case, you'll be using offset, so it'll fix it from there. Uh, yeah, keep offset, because connected will like essentially move the bones so that they're connected, and we just want it. We just want everything to just like follow it and not just like be attached to it. Yeah, no problem. So yeah, now he's animatable, and that's sort of, that's sort of all I sort of set up for you guys to have. So now you should have an animatable character. He's textured and rigged. Um, for some people who like may have not gotten a chance to do weight painting, but you can also do weight painting. Showed very quickly how to do that. And you have basically all the basics to work in Blender. Um, oh, sure, right. Yeah, I can do that. So, yeah. So, go into your rendered view. So, if you're in Eevee, if you don't want to use rendered view, you can use materials, but then, you won't know what it'll look like when it's rendered. But go into rendered. By default, you should have a point light, so just move it somewhere. You can change its intensity by going back to the properties, hitting the light bulb down here. Just change its power, color, make it a sun. Actually, oh god, let's make it like a sun at like 5 or like 1. Rotate that around. Um, so now I have a little shadow. Why are the eyeballs not showing up? Oh, because I disconnected it. Hold up. Wait, why eyeball no show? Sir. Well, okay. I'll worry about that later. In order to go in the camera view, go into numpad. It's numpad 0 by default. Or again, if you don't have a numpad, shift, no, just normal tilde. That'll view camera. That goes in the camera view. Um, by default, unlike Maya, the camera is not locked to your view. So this will just preview it. So when you like rotate your camera like with just normal middle click, it'll go out. If you want to lock the camera to your view so that the camera like sees what you're seeing, you go into hit the N menu. So I just hit N. That'll bring this up. Go into view on the right, camera to view. So now, see when you move around, the camera now moves around. So that's basic stuff for that. And in order to render, you can either go up top, render and hit render image, or render animation. Render image is obviously just render image. But for an animation, that requires a little bit more setup. So go back to your properties menu, and on like the third from the top, there should be like almost a printer looking type thing. That's where all your output settings are. Oh, well, at second to the top, the camera, that's where your render settings are. So that's where you can change. So in your render settings, you can change your render engine, your samples. For Eevee, there's a lot of the stuff here. You can turn on ambient occlusion, bloom. They're not really relevant here. Screen space, all this other stuff. You can also turn on freestyle, which is a way to add line art in Blender. On Windows, it actually sucks ass. Apparently on Mac, it actually works. In Windows, it like triples your render time depending on what you're doing. It shouldn't. But like, so watch if I hit turn on freestyle. So now it automatically rendered line art for me. And it basically just composites a layer on top. But I would use that with caution. But yeah, and output settings, you could change the resolution, frame rate and stuff. For the output here, this is where you choose your directory. So you just hit the folder that chooses where it goes. Your file format, it's just if you want to, you could do an image sequence, which is typically what you do for like big animations, so you don't worry about it crashing midway. But for short stuff, I just like going straight to video. So FFmpeg encoding, which is just right under MP4 or any of these that you prefer. So yeah, and then you just go a render and then render animation for that. Oh, and make sure you set your frame start and end to the amount that you want, because that will determine like what frames you're telling it to render. So if you only want like only render one to like I don't know like 60, make sure to change it here. Yeah, that's the basics. If you want to render out a guy, you can do that. If you want to Playblast, which um which is viewport rendering, you would actually go to view in like the viewport. You'd go up to the top left, hit view, and do a viewport render. And that's Blender's equivalent to a Playblast. Though when you're in Eevee and in rendered view, it's almost one-to-one to rendered. If you want to turn off all this stuff and just have the mesh, you could just turn off overlays, and then it really is just the, which is just in the top right here with the two circles. And viewport render image, and that is basically exactly the same as what you would see if you just rendered straight out from the actual renderer. Oh, well, I'm in material, but viewport render, so that's that. And then render image. So yeah, so this is like actually rendered it through Eevee, and this is the viewport render to the Playblast. So you can see because of the differences, not a lot, because like I said, Eevee's already a real-time renderer. So it's basically one-to-one if you want to play. So if you have like an Eevee thing and you want to just Playblast it, if you're like really don't care about quality, you can sort of get away with it and like cut down render times. So yeah, did any of that make sense? Because I know I was like sort of jumping around a lot of spots about rendering and things. All right, that's good. So yeah, you can also animate the camera, obviously, just the same thing with keyframes. I'm just gonna turn back overlays. Since yeah, someone else have a question? No, because yeah, there's so I know you're referring to how Maya sets projects. Blender doesn't do that. It's just a single file type. So you can manually set up directories and like how you would for Maya when you set up a project, but for Blender, if you just hit Control S, that'll just save a blend file. Now, it's actually good that you mentioned this because you have to be careful because of that. Textures, if you're not careful and you don't save it out properly, won't save with the blend. So, for instance, if you like you hit Control S and you hit save, well, actually it's just one. In this case, it should. Oh, it doesn't tell you. Okay. So so preferably you'd like either go into your like image editor, so I go back to shading and actually manually save out the image, so that way you can keep it. Otherwise, it won't know to keep the texture. Or you can set it so it packs with the file. So yeah, so if you go image and pack, so then you won't have to worry about saving an external file for the textures and stuff. But you have to make sure to do that. So yeah. But generally speaking, most of the stuff is in it, and other than like image, it's only when we're dealing with like external images and other maybe directories and stuff, will that pose a problem. But generally everything just stays in Blender in the blend file. Yeah. You you sort of. I mean the just send the whole blend file, and that's basically it. Yeah. And if you have just external stuff, you just have to send it separately. But you would do the same for Maya, so. No, it's fine. Heathen. Yeah, I mean, if y'all still have time, since we have a little bit of time, we can touch on sculpting, because you can also do that in Blender pretty decently. So we can do that. So yes, it's we'll be posting it onto the YouTube. We'll send the link in the Discord. Yeah, 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 no problem. So yeah, but so just before we jump into like sculpting and just any extra tidbits that I might have, does anyone have any questions? Maybe you're still stuck on something, or I don't know, just questions about the program. Because if not, we're just gonna jump into sculpting and any other fun stuff in Blender that I can think of. All right, so let's get into a little bit of sculpting, show how that works. So I'm just gonna create a new file, create new, Control Ed. You can go straight into like a sculpting workspace, if that's what you want to, or if you just hit New General, that creates like the full thing. But so I'll be a little quick on this because I'm just really showing it, and if you could follow along, you can if you want. So we got our default cube. In order to add sort of subdivisions, you just go to a modifier. You actually add multi-res and not subdivision surface if you're sculpting, because subdivision surface won't actually change it when you're sculpting. You'll only be sculpting like this mesh. And you won't be sculpting that previewed mesh. So you want to use multi-res if you're sculpting. So multi-res, this is so you can add in the resolution. Hopefully I don't crash. Oh, looks like 9 is going to be the limit. So now you have a thing. So just go into sculpt mode. So same as how you change from edit mode, sculpt mode, and then you're now sculpting. Um, when you rotate around the camera, it'll like change to like the less res, because this is, like I said, this you haven't actually applied the resolution. It's just a modifier. So it's basically just saving the data. And now you can sculpt. It's easy as that. Um, and all your brushes on the side here. Same for texture painting. It's the same way to control the brush. So F to change the size. Shift F to control strength. You could turn on mirroring, which is up the top here. So yeah, now it's mirrored. Oh god. Um, if you don't like it, like when you're moving around the camera, it goes like that, you can just apply the modifier. Oops, not that one. Oh, you have to go back into object mode for that. And then it's actually applied. So like, oh, I shouldn't have gone to edit mode. You can see now all the vertices are there. Oh god. So yeah, so that's, you can do some basic sculpting in here. You can also bake out in Blender. I've had like mixed results in baking. So yeah, so that's sculpting. They have a pose brush, which is built specifically so if you have like armature and stuff, you can shape it you can turn on Dino Topo. That's fine. And that starts adding geometry when you do stuff. So very similar to ZBrush, just without the cancerous UI and slightly less performance, because obviously this isn't built like how ZBrush is built, so it can't handle as high as resolution, but can still handle relatively high resolution models. Just not. Oh, right, because you're on Dino Topo. But yeah, so that's sculpting. If you ever want to sculpt in Blender, this is how you do it. I think I killed Blender. Oh, because I turned on Dino Topo. But yeah. There's also a cool way to create a base mesh. Oh, if this allows me. Using the skin modifier. So if you get like a just a plain edges. So you just want just to have like a line. Add a skin modifier, and then you can. Then that will create geometry based off well, your lines and stuff. You can add smoothing and stuff. There should be. Oh, and if you add a subdivision surface, then or a multi-res to it, then you can basically create like a base mesh that you can sculpt off of. So like let's like have this have this be the arms, like this be the head or something. Oh, that like circle around it, that shows where the essentially where the base is for where it creates the skin. So you can reset that, but whatever. Whoops, not that. So yeah, so now when I turn this on, you can see it's absolutely horrifying. But you can use this as a good base for sculpting. I believe it's Control S. Nope, not Control Alt S. Control A. You can just like control that kind of stuff. You like wanna give them like more of a waist or something. It's a little bit wonky. I haven't touched on this a lot, but there's also a way if you want to create a little base mesh, and then you can sculpt off that. So that's that. That's sculpting. Um, yeah, if I can show some more nodes with like shading and stuff or anything else, but we're sort of like, I think we're running on time. So if there's anything anyone wants to like see that can be done in Blender, just shoot it my way. But otherwise, this is basically it for the workshop. Just a simple thing, introduce you all the tools in Blender, what it can do. Hopefully it inspires you to use it a little bit more. I find it to be much more user-friendly than Maya, especially for quick stuff, as you can see. It's a very quick workflow that gets you quickly to an end result. And while Maya may have more powerful tools, it's really built for the full pipeline as opposed to Blender, which is just, it's very streamlined since everything is in the program. I can show you, yeah. I'll quickly show you one of the more like, I'm into animation, so I have one of the free rigs they have just on the Blender site, if you're into that. I believe it's somewhere. Characters? Rain. There it is. Character rain. But yeah, this should. Oh. I'll just open up the file. But yeah. This should be it. Any questions, comments, concerns? Any final thoughts people like to hear about? Otherwise, we're just gonna wrap this up. Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. And be as honest as possible. We're big boys. We can take it. Yeah. Oh, also, this is a little fun thing that Blender has. So one of the built-in add-ons in Blender, you literally don't have to download anything. It just comes with it. Is Rigify. So you just go in here, enable Rigify. That will allow you to when you go into Armature, that's what these are. So this will create this, which is what you'd use to like line up to whatever your character is. And when you hit generate rig, oh wait, hold up. Generate rig, this will generate a fully functioning rig with, whoops, go pose mode. So it's got all this stuff, so you can do layers. Oops. So enable visibility. You can toggle IK, There's tweak bones. So all the stuff is working in order, and it just works. It just works. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I have one. Let's see. I'll show you one character that's rigged using that as the base. Sabrakatsu. There she is. Character. Abby. I did not do this. I bought like a animation class. But yeah, this is all based in Rigify. As you can see, it's all this stuff. Excuse it as it loads in the shaders. But yeah, this is a Dylan Goo's Sabrakatsu. Yeah, if anyone ever knows of Dylan Goo, it's taking a sec because it's loading in, and I think I'm recording, so it's going a little bit slower. But yeah, so this is all based in Rigify, so you can see it's fully functioning whenever it finishes loading. Yeah. Yeah, because like the rig it generates, it's just a full-on rig. It just has all the custom settings and parents all set up properly. Yeah, and also Rigify uses a special script that creates this, layer viewing thing, and they just borrow it off of that. So yeah, so I see, and it's even got FK to IK. Oops. Well, FK IK, and you can do a switch if you want, stuff like that. And this is all based. This is all like 99% that comes with Rigify. You know. So cool, yeah. So if you want to quickly rig characters, you can also just use Rigify, and that works too. Yeah, there's a lot of default add-ons in Blender that are just like in there that you can just enable. Like sapling. What do I have enabled on here? Sapling tree gen, extra objects. A lot of these are like default stuff. Loop tools, that's a good one. Apparently cycles is considered an add-on. It'd be awkward to turn off cycles. But yeah. But yeah. If there's nothing else, I think that will conclude the workshop. It's exactly 7, 2 hours as I sort of envisioned. Yeah. Hopefully y'all learned something. Yeah, make sure to fill out that feedback form. That would be much appreciated. Yeah, otherwise, y'all, I will also be posting, of course, the recording